broadcasting in the 2 p.m. hour from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing in the mornings on your morning drive or with your morning coffee at 5 a.m. on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. It's that time of the week where we're going to take a break from the news and talk about culture and entertainment going into the weekend. So what is on the show today? In the second half hour, Dale Stark from Hennepin Arts is going to be here to break down the Tony nominations. But up first, best-selling author Marie Rutkowski's new novel, Ordinary Love, comes out next week on June 10th. It is a sweeping romance of two people trying to forge a path toward hope, bound by a love they discovered when they were too young to understand its power. Marie, after living in Moscow and Prague, went to Harvard University and received a PhD in English literature, specializing in Shakespeare. I'm going to have questions about that, actually. Upon graduating, she taught in Harvard's English department and the history and literature department, has been a professor of English at Brooklyn College since 2007. Marie has written several YA books, such as The Shadow Society and The Chronos Chronicles, which includes The Cabinet of Wonders. Her first novel for adults was 2022's Real Easy. Her books, folks, have received numerous accolades and nominations, including a Kirkus Best Teen Book of the Year, a Bank Street Book of the Year, and a People Book of the Week. There's a lot more. Hello, Marie. Welcome to The Gailey Show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
All right, Ordinary Love. Why don't we start with some plot? So can you share with our listeners what they can expect when they turn to page 1?
Sure. Well, this is a story of Emily, who, when she was 18 years old, fell in love with her best friend, another girl. And it was a passionate first true love that ended in heartbreak. And she then ended up marrying a man who seems perfect. He is wealthy, he's handsome, he adores her, but there are things that she doesn't know about him. And as their marriage goes awry and you see the ways in which she can be really controlling and manipulative, she learns that she needs to get out of that marriage. And just as she is exiting that marriage, she runs into her ex-girlfriend at a party in New York. And her ex-girlfriend, in the meanwhile, has become famous. She is an Olympian. She is a track athlete. She has the kind of stature of Megan Rapinoe or Abby Wambach. She's a lady killer who's dating actresses. And the big question of the book is, will they be able to make it work this time? So it is a second chance romance. And I do think that it is filled with a lot of hope and passion.
Wonderful. I read in an interview that you gave where you think one of the themes of, or you're expressing one of the themes of Ordinary Love is, I'm going to quote it here, measuring who you are now against who you were before. Can you unpack that for me?
Yeah. Well, one of the inspirations for this book is Jane Austen's Persuasion. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And it is the story of Anne Elliot, who, when she was younger, is persuaded by her family to not accept the proposal of a young man she's in love with. And he comes back on the scene. He's been rejected, and then he goes off. He comes back, and he is the catch of the town. Every girl wants to marry him. He's so handsome. He's wealthy. And I did make the love interest in Ordinary Love a little bit like a queer female Captain Wentworth. I just thought it would be really fun to do. But also, I think, Persuasion is maybe one of the earliest examples of a second chance romance that we have in our English American tradition. But I think it's more than that. Like, the book is not just about the romantic plot. It's also about how Anne is considering the way she's changed, how time has passed, and whether she is still the same person who turned down Captain Wentworth or not, and how time has changed her. And I guess, as somebody who's written a lot of young adult novels, I thought a lot about writing novels that depicted someone coming of age, someone transitioning from childhood into young adulthood. And when I wrote this book, I realized, and maybe this is obvious, maybe this is this is something everybody knows. But I just realized, oh, we're always coming of age. It doesn't, I'm in my 40s now, and it just doesn't stop. You're always becoming someone new. And then you have these previous versions of yourself that line up in the past. And you think a lot about who you were and what has changed between who you were and who you are now.
And the queer reconnection, the second chance romance that you're talking about, is a useful device, I think, for exploring that theme, because there's always the question, what if this and this had happened, and would we still be together? But there is that, what you're talking about, of the particular, I feel like, for queer reconnection, devices, whether it's in novels or in films or TV, where you do kind of have to assess, like, am I the same person who can have a relationship with this particular person
Yes.
right now?
Yeah.
Especially when there's that thing of, like, they are kind of meant for each other, aren't they?
Well, no spoilers, but I mean, yeah, I think they are. But I mean, it sounds like what you're getting at is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, but it sounds to me like you're suggesting that the way in which queer people have been perceived and received in society has really changed a lot over time.
Mhm.
And so it's not just that we measure who we are against who we were, but we measure what society allows us to do now against what society allowed us to do before. I
Mhm.
mean, I think about being in high school in the 90s, and no one at my school was out.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
so,
Same here.
yeah, it's also kind of funny how so many of my closest friends now are just out and queer. And I mean, it's not that we told each other when we were in high school, but now we all know. And so, I think that for Emily, she's not just thinking about how time has changed and how she has changed, but also, the ways in which she had to struggle against the way people received her queerness when she was a teenager in the 90s, and how
Mhm.
that affected her, like her father's homophobia, for example.
Yeah. I know, it's weird when I watch something like Heartstopper now, I'm like, "Oh, my
Mm.
16-year-old self loves that," but I literally, it's hard for me to even imagine it in the '90s when I'm like, that just would never have flown, or at least maybe where I was in the United States, or even my family in France. Anyway, something I noticed when I was reading reviews of the book, if I can pivot just a little bit here to the relationship with Jack, how many folks used the word, like, squeamish, that the portrayal and depiction of Jack was so spot on, and, like, who he was, both the flaws, but then the abusiveness just made people, they would use words like squirm, I was feeling squeamish. And talk to me about creating Jack and that type of a relationship that he was kind of putting Emily in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really important for me with Jack to make sure that readers understood him and didn't think that he was entirely a villain, or at least he doesn't want to be.
Mhm.
He does really love Emily. Um, and the thing is that his manner of being abusive is hard to catch.
Mhm.
And it's hard for her to catch at first. All she sees in the beginning is somebody who really adores her. And as time goes on, you can see the way in which he controls her financially, the ways in which he fills her with anxiety because he's so unpredictable, that he can be really loving and happy one moment, and then be kind of verbally abusive the next, and can turn on her and blame her for not loving him enough, for not being sensitive enough to him. And I don't know about you, but I'm the sort of person who, if somebody is mad at me, if somebody's upset with me, I automatically assume that there's a good reason. Like if
Mm.
I'm driving down the road and I hear somebody honk a horn, I think, oh, that's me. I've done something wrong. And so I I just I think that I did put a little bit of that into Emily, like where, if somebody is behaving in a way that is not rational, but they're so upset, I think sometimes our first response is to think, oh, there must be a reason for this because no one would get so upset about something so small. So I have to figure out what it is that's triggering him. And so, because she cares about people and she's a really loving woman, she really, I think, at first responds to his manipulation, assuming that she is at fault and trying to correct her behavior. And even when she does correct her behavior, it's not enough. And then she's left in a state of anxiety, not knowing when he's going to approve of her and when he's going to disapprove.
Mhm.
So I think I hadn't really seen that kind of emotional abuse depicted that much in film or in books. And I thought, you often see physical abuse,
Yeah.
and that's not what this is. So I thought it would be a challenge for me as a writer to capture that.
I am talking with author Marie Rutkowski, whose new novel, Ordinary Love, comes out next week on June 10th. I have about 90 seconds here before I go into a break, and all my next questions are huge. Huge questions. One I will pose right now, and then we can pick it up after the break. Is one of the questions the book asks is: should Emily risk her children, her privacy, and the fragile peace she has found to be with a woman she loved long ago? Quoting from the book description. And when I read that, it reminded me of the French author Constance Depré, whose kids were essentially taken from her when
Mm.
she came out. Oversimplification, sorry, Constance, of your story, but I'm curious about your thoughts on the consequences that queer women have to face when they leave a heteronormative facing presenting relationship and start a queer level or queer relationship, not level, a queer relationship. But hold on to that answer. On a huge question.
It's a big
We
one.
have to fit in a short break here. We're going to have more with Marie when we come back. Connect with more progressive news and analysis at am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com. Be sure to follow us as well on Blue Sky. We're at thegaleyshow.org. Stay tuned. More after this break. You're listening to The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour. I'm joined by best-selling author Marie Rutkowski, whose newest novel, Ordinary Love, comes out next week on June 10th. It's on many, many lists of books you need to be reading this summer for a reason. Before the break, I posed a huge question to Marie, which is around the challenges that queer women face when they leave a heteronormative or heterosexual presenting relationship to start a queer one. In this instance, Emily is risking her children and her privacy. Tell me more about that and the portrayal of that.
Sure. In the first queer relationship I had after I left my straight marriage, my partner at the time was talking about Carol, and they said, "Oh, it's so nice to see a queer movie with a happy ending." And I said, "What?"
Carol?
And yeah, and "That's," I said, "No." And my partner then said, "Oh, but they're together at the end. They get together." And I said, "But she loses her daughter. She loses her daughter in a custody battle. Yes, she gets the woman that she's in love with, but she loses her child in the process." So I think Carol is partly tragic because of that. So, I mean, that movie is set in the 50s, and it is technically no longer allowed for a judge to rule against a woman simply because she's queer, to take away her kids. But something that happens in the book when Emily begins to date Jen again, and Jen is famous, and there are paparazzi who are interested in taking her photo. She's in the news, etc. Is that when Emily goes to see a divorce lawyer, the lawyer says, you should keep this relationship quiet. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You don't have to listen to me. But even though it's technically not against the law, for you to be queer, you could still get a homophobic judge who decides to rule against you because it's not in the children's best interest to be exposed to your girlfriend's lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And that word lifestyle can be code for a lot of different things. And so that was something, I think as far as we have come, there are still a lot of real threats alive today.
Yeah. If I may talk about Jen for a minute, I have been a big fan of the Olympics since I was a kid, and obviously, maybe stereotypically, as a gay kid, my first love was figure skating. But as I got older, I just became obsessed with the Olympics. I watch like everything that I can, winter and summer. And something that I found very interesting over the past few Olympic cycles of queer people coming out while competing at the Olympics is, our queer bodies are so policed and heavily regulated, and yet here they are on the world's biggest stage performing these feats of athleticism that are like, what? And we're celebrating queer bodies. Like, it completely upends the entire narrative. And you've got people, like Tom Daley and Sha'Carri Richardson and Megan Rapinoe and Gus Kenworthy, et cetera. Talk to me about writing a character, Jen, who is an Olympian. Like, what was that? What did that bring up for you? And what did you discover about queer folks in sport as you were writing, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to write Jen as somebody who the public adores, and is just fascinated by. And I definitely was inspired by people like Abby Wambach, and these like queer people with who have this kind of national presence, and who are so beloved. And one inspiration I had is a track athlete named Nikki Hiltz, who is non-binary and competed in the Olympics last summer and came 7th in the world for their category, which I hope I'm not wrong, was the 1500 meter. And Nikki I follow them on Instagram, and they've just been such an inspiration. I have loved seeing them shine and just grow and really come to more renown. And also, it was so nice to hear them say repeatedly that it just really touched them to hear announcers get their pronouns right. That it was so meaningful. I think that it's not like, I'm sure that for all athletes, it's not just about winning or losing, that there's a lot of other emotions and emotional moments that come with that. And it was just kind of heartwarming and touching to see that for Nikki Hiltz, that simple fact of hearing their pronouns was really meaningful.
Okay, can we talk Shakespeare for a moment?
Oh, always.
Okay, so listeners of the show probably don't know that I actually trained with the British American Drama Academy for 2 summers in Oxford on scholarship, specifically in their Shakespeare program. So I was again, stereotypical. I was an actor in the first part of my life while I was doing TV broadcasting. And anyway, long time ago. What was the play that hooked you? That said, I've got to do this. I got to commit to my academic degree to Shakespeare.
Well, the first play that, when I was 12 years old, I was in 5th grade, and I was looking at the books on the shelf in my classroom. I saw a collection of Shakespeare's plays, and I had already self-identified as somebody who loves books. And I saw the name Shakespeare and I thought, I don't know who Shakespeare is. But what I do know is that people who love books love Shakespeare. Therefore, I will love Shakespeare. And yeah, it's like Foucault's the author function in effect. Anyway, so I took down the book and I read A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I understood not a word of it. I didn't really get it. And then I read Romeo and Juliet, which I understood a little bit more, and I managed to convince my best friend, another girl at the time, to enact it with me. And we would do like the death scene and the kissing scene, and we would kiss each other, but we would put our hands between our lips.
Oh.
So that like we weren't doing anything gay. Sorry, I'm not sure that this is the answer that you wanted, but I guess it was, these plays really early on when I was 12 years old that hooked me.
Yeah.
And over time, there have been different works by Shakespeare that have drawn me or affected me more. I would say right now, the work by Shakespeare that I've been most fascinated by is his sonnets.
Oh no, we've
Yeah.
got 30 seconds left. That is something. Oh my God. Marie, if you ever get a chance, be a friend of the show, please come back. We'll talk about
Yeah, anytime.
like to. Folks, the book is Ordinary Love. We've included a link to it on our show notes and on our website. You can connect with Marie at marierutkowski.com. Also on Instagram at Marie Rutkowski. Quick break here. When we come back, we're talking Tony nominations with Dale Stark from Heaven Arts. You're listening to The Gailey Show. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing in the mornings on your morning drive or with your morning coffee at 5 a.m. on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker, joined now in studio with my executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, all.
We are just past the bottom of the hour. Director of Marketing and Communication for Hennepin Arts, Dale Stark, joins us now. The Tony nominations are out. What is more gay than that? So, welcome back to The Gailey Show, Dale.
Pretty much. Nothing more gay.
Yeah, it's all downhill from there.
I'm just going to get this rant out of the way, first of all. The show that should win everything this year, but can't because it was the Lucille Lortel, was Vanya, the one-person show with Andrew Scott, but it can't get it because apparently Lucille Lortel isn't a Broadway house. Nope. So whatever, Tonys. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, for those of you who weren't lucky enough to see it, sorry, it was phenomenal, and it's the reason why Andrew Scott. It was a beautiful showcase, rather, to show why Andrew Scott is one of the great actors of our time, queer or otherwise. Again, now soapbox stepping off, rant over Tony nominations. Where should we begin?
Well, shall we focus just on musicals? I feel like that's what most people are going to.
That's the gayest.
That's the gayest. So let's we can either talk about new musical or we can talk about a remount. What would you prefer?
Oh, we can dive into new musicals first.
Okay. So I can list them and you can give a reaction, or you can indicate what you think the winner might be. Do you want to do it that way?
Yeah, we can absolutely do this. I will preface, there's one I haven't seen, so I'm not really considering that in the mix. So my opinion is biased, but I will give what I would vote for, and then I'll give what I think's gonna win.
Okay. Ooh, and can I just mention
who will win should win?
When I love those. When we were in New York, we didn't. I was encouraging us to go see maybe Happy Ending, and everyone was like, "I never heard of that," so we didn't go. And now it has 10 Tony nominations. So, with that little bit of personal data, go ahead.
What did you see instead?
We just saw Vanya. We couldn't decide on another one. Well, it was just sad.
Like to be fair, I said I will go see anything. And Jim couldn't make a decision. So
wow. Okay.
It was pathetic. All right. So new musical. Dale Stark, go.
Oh gosh. So, so there's 5 shows. The
Yep.
one I did not see is Dead Outlaw. So I don't have much to say about that because
Okay.
I didn't see it, and it would be unfair for me to say anything.
Yeah.
So the other nominees, just so
So
folks
the other
know,
nominees are
Buena Vista
one of
Social Club, Death
Yep.
Becomes Her, Maybe Happy Ending, and Operation Mincemeat, a new musical.
Yes. This is tough. This is really tough because okay, I'm just gonna dive in. Maybe
Yeah.
Happy Endings, maybe Happy Ending should win every prize there ever was.
Wow.
Oh.
Was my I was in New York a few weeks ago for a Broadway conference and saw a handful of shows. It was my number one favorite show of the week, probably within the last 5 years.
Wow.
Whoa.
And
And
is it an import from South Korea, or it was
Yes.
originated in South Korea, I guess?
correct. And stars Darren Chris. And you know, it is a hard show to describe. It's about 2 robots falling in love. Now, you know, that's not really super gay. I mean, it could be, but
No.
it was done so brilliantly, and my philosophy when seeing any show is to go in completely blind
Right.
and not know anything, because then I really can let the story wrap itself around me. I don't have expectations.
Yep.
And maybe Happy Ending. You guys, it was so good.
So it surprised you. You were like surprised by how good it was.
Yeah, I had no idea. I don't know if I've ever seen Darren Criss in anything on stage. Of course, you know, from Glee, but he was also in that American Crime Story about Andrew Cunanan and Versace.
Yep.
And I just found him captivating and
Yep.
just creepy as hell.
Yes.
And so I'm like, which was Andrew Cunanan, but it's a beautiful story, and the way it's told, actually a lot of the shows this season were told a lot of imagination used with I'm trying to figure out how to describe it, where they have some type of scrim in front, but then they have some opening space. So there was a few that it looked kind of like it was a newsreel or something, because it was shaped as such. But it was very cathartic, and it let me cry for a little while, where it kind of was like, and it was kind of a mix. It was a mix of happy tears. It was a mix of sad tears, but it really kind of shows the power of love, even among the robots.
Wow.
And
I've been crying since November 4th, pretty much every day. So
yeah. So that's a whole nother show.
I'm sorry.
But they're not like, you know, Rosie the Robot type of robots. They're helper bots is what they're called. And it's just it's quirky. It feels kind of like frosting, like eating frosting. Where
rich.
It's rich and, you know, just sweet enough, but not overpowerful sweetness.
So it should win. What is going to win, do you think?
Okay, so I'm going on record as saying maybe Happy Ending should win. There, I said that. I'll get to who I think will win at the end. The next show, Death Becomes Her, which is based on the movie. Now that's, you know, if we're gonna go with the gay thing, that's a pretty gay movie. Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn. And throwing Bruce Willis. The stage adaptation I thought was great. The music felt very contemporary, very popular. Christopher Seaver's in it, and I believe he's actually from Minnesota. And he plays the Bruce Willis character, and he does a really good job. None of them are really. I got the sense were impersonating their film counterparts. and I thought their performances stood very well on their own. Some fun special effects. They do the where she gets the hole through her stomach. They do
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And there's another really cool scene of one of them falling down the stairs in slow motion. Now, fun fact: during this week, we're at this conference, they have a lot of what they call creative conversations. So they'll bring in shows, and they'll bring in creatives and or cast members from the shows.
Yep.
And so, as it turned out, each day there of one of the creative conversations, I just happened to be seeing the show that night.
Oh,
So
wow.
in some cases, I learned some of the tricks before going in and seeing.
Yep.
Let's see here. Maybe Happy Ending did announce that it's going to go out on tour. Death Becomes Her has announced it's going to go out on tour.
Death Becomes Her. So I am absolutely obsessed with the film. I watch it every Halloween.
Oh, do you? I haven't seen it for a while.
That is why Jim's shaking his head. That is why I was like, I'm so nervous, because when I saw the musical adaptation of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, I was like, I hate everyone. I'm going to burn this to the ground. And so I was too nervous about. I'm like, no, I do not want to go in there and have the film ruined.
Right.
For me, but I'm glad to hear that it was worth it.
It stays pretty true to the film. There's and we could definitely do a show on films turned into musicals. Because there are definitely times when I paused and thought, who asked for this? Where was the burning need for this movie to add songs and put on stage?
Frankenstein was that for me, but anyway, what did you think of, what did you think of Operation Mincemeat?
Oh, that was, I think, was that the first show I saw of the week? That might have been the first show I saw of the week, and loved it. Oh my gosh, it is. They've compared it to kind of Spamalot-y humor and a little British, very slapstick. And the fact that it's based on historical events of Hitler only makes it that much better, because it's kind of one of those situations where it's too bizarre to be true, but it's true. Right. They could not write something more entertaining, and it's and there is, I think it's in Act One, a bring the house down in tears number that comes from out of nowhere, and I always like to like with Six last season or the season before, and Juliet last year, speaking of Shakespeare. I like it when a musical can also kind of teach me something that I should have learned in high school. Because, the plot about Operation Mincemeat is something I never even knew about. And, it's fun, it's kind of fun to learn something in that way, but to also have it especially for Operation Mincemeat, and the absurdness of it, kind of reflecting back to today's times of the absurdness of what we're going through. And you could really pick a card on any topic, and it's going to be absurd.
Totally.
Let's see. The
Buena Vista Social Club.
Buena Vista Social Club is. I didn't know much about Buena Vista Social Club, the music, and you don't really need to. It is full of this incredible Latin music, and I'm trying to remember. Pretty much all of it, if not all of it, is sung in Spanish, and dialogue is in English or Spanglish, and that's definitely not a barrier to get the sense of what's happening in the show. And it's it's kind of a long lost love type of show, and it's told through it's got two storylines running at the same time, now and then, in the past. And it is a very interesting show, the way it's performed. It's very authentic, and they have announced that they're going on tour as well. So of the 5, four of them for sure are going on tour. I don't know anything. I don't know about Dead Outlaw. So now if I had to, and I'm not going to, but if I had to rank best to worst,
yes,
one I would never say worst. Best, in my opinion, maybe Happy Ending.
Yeah.
I will say this. I think Buena Vista Social Club is going to win.
Oh, interesting.
I just have this feeling. They're two very, very different types of shows. Maybe Happy Ending has maybe 3 cast members in total, with the 2 leads being primary, and then there's a couple extra. But it's a very subdued, calm, soothing, floating on a raft in the lake type of show.
It's like a little chamber musical, isn't it? Which is weird for Broadway. That's not.
Yeah, and Buena Vista is like whitewater rafting.
Right.
It is loud and colorful and energetic, and the passion that is exuded from the show comes from the music, and that's all based on authentic originality. It wasn't something that I feel like was created in a lab to attempt to represent this entire culture. And so
we are talking with Dale Stark, Director of Marketing Communications at Hennepin Arts in the Twin Cities. Whole of the category of the Tonys that we're going to get to, Revival. So one last break, but lots to get to still here on the Gailey Show on AM 950 and WCPT 820. Welcome back to the Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I'm in studio with my executive producer, Jim Pounds, and a very clever producer and our controller, Patrick, who just played the perfect music to talk about Buena Vista Social Club, which is nominated for Best Musical at this year's Tonys. We are talking with Dale about the Tony Award nominations. I think, can we turn to the Best Revival?
I think we'd better.
Yep.
There's only 4 nominees. Is that right, Dale?
Yep. Now, I've seen 2 of them. I haven't seen the other 2.
Okay.
So the 2 I've not seen, Floyd Collins, which I heard some mixed comments about, and then Pirates, the Penzance musical, did not see that. Okay. I think it will be down to the next 2. Yeah. One is the revival of Gypsy. And then the revival of Sunset Boulevard.
Right.
So I'm just going to jump into it. Sunset Boulevard is probably one of my all-time. This revival is top 5 favorite shows of all time.
This revival. This
revival.
Okay.
And for me, again, this is my opinion. As much as I like Andrew Lloyd Webber, that is a little bit of a small barrier, if you will, to get into the show. And now I had not seen a production of Sunset before this revival, so I definitely was not comparing this to something else.
Right.
And sometimes I think that can work, and sometimes I think it's a detriment. Oklahoma a few years back, when they did it in the round, and again, I had not seen a proper or an original stage production of any kind, or even the movie, which, by the way, I saw the original movie a couple weeks after I saw the revival of Oklahoma, and it was just like, whoa, very different. Nonetheless, Sunset, I mean, it's completely stripped down, and there was something so magical about even the way it begins, and they do a really neat job of integrating digital into the show through backdrops, not to replace sets, but to enhance or give the feeling that you're watching a movie. Because they do what I thought was really neat at the end, and this is trivial, but they run credits. Which because I definitely think that the film is legendary on its own. So it does feel like they've captured that sort of noir feeling.
Right. One criticism I'd heard about the production that made me wonder if I wanted to see it was that I think the age difference between Norma and I'm sorry, the gentleman, I can't remember his name, her older, him younger. I heard that was kind of monkeyed with, and that the Norma in this was younger. Did that throw the dynamic off? Because it seems like it would to me.
It didn't for me, because I'm so old.
Not as old as I am.
The actress in Sunset, Nicole, I had no idea was a pop star.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I had no idea she was part of Pussycat Dolls, and so I had an inkling of that. Oh, she's a celebrity of some type, but
I see.
Wouldn't be able to pull her out of a phone book. I can now. She was absolutely phenomenal, and her counterpart. No, I didn't feel that there was an age difference between them. Although, she is younger. So that did kind of throw me a little bit from what I had already previously known about the show, because I was expecting kind of all, we've seen a lot of parody of her character over the years.
Totally.
The top of Act 2 is unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's this thing where they go out where they go outside and walk the street, and that's singing about Sunset Boulevard. And I just kept thinking, my gosh, that would be so cool if the show toured, and for them to figure out how to do that outside of each theater, city to city that they go. But
okay, I'm gonna have to, because I want to get to shows that are gonna be on tour and coming to Chicago and to Minneapolis. So we've got a couple minutes left. Who should win and who's going to win Best Revival?
I think Sunset Boulevard should win. I think Gypsy's gonna win. And
Audra McDonald, it's hard to beat.
And deservedly so.
Yeah.
However, I do think that with the recent, and God, this could be a segment too, the whole Patti LuPone thing.
Oh gosh.
And the whole fight. I mean, that's as gay as it's going to get for Tony's, because then you're adding, drama into that whole mix.
Right. I hope it doesn't break. I hope it doesn't break out at the Tony Awards. But
there was a show that is on tour that's going to come through Chicago and then come to Minneapolis. What is that show?
That is Disney's Beauty and the Beast. And that is a brand new production. It's the 35th anniversary of the title. And fun fact, the very first national tour launched in Minneapolis. So it's a nice homecoming. It's the same director choreographer from back in 1995. It'll premiere in Chicago after a tech week in Schenectady, and then hit Minneapolis.
Perfect.
In August.
So in August for 2 weeks. So that was the very first Broadway show I ever saw of all time, and that's what it's gigantic and big, but it sucked me in because it was so neat seeing live performers. Everything else was splendid, of course, but it's that personal connection that you feel when you see something being done live versus going to a movie.
Folks will get to go see it live. You can get your tickets at hennepinarts.org or hennepinarts.org/events. Thank you, Dale, for joining us.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And we'll
folks.
need to book 2 hours next time.
Yeah, I know. You can keep the gay going on all weekend. AM 950 is going to be at Golden Valley Pride tomorrow. Check them out in person or listen live. Stay tuned for Out Chicago on Sunday for your gay best friends, Ellen and Scott. That is all for us today. See you until Monday. Keep it queer, America.
Keep it queer.